So I am the last speaker of this session, and my name is Eileen Hibits. I'm in the School for Biological Sciences here at Nebraska, and I'm going to talk to you about some community engagement that I've done using my organism of research focus, which is arachnids. So this came about because I had an NSF career grant and found out about a funding opportunity that if you had a research grant, you could actually apply for supplemental funds to do outreach. And this program unfortunately no longer exists, but NSF is actually reevaluating it. I've been interviewed multiple times, and they're hoping to re-implement it. So the main purpose of this funding was to convey to diverse audiences key features of your research, such as methods, results, and significance. So they really wanted active scientists to be going out into their community and connecting with the public. So my grant had two major components, an after-school science program and an interactive informal science education family-based day event. So I'll talk about both of these very briefly because there isn't a lot of time, but I'm happy to expand on them at all afterwards. So the after-school science programs, I developed a course here at UNL. It's a special topics course, BIOS 497, 897. Many of actually the students who've taken my course are out in the audience here. And it's called Communicating Science Through Outreach. And what this course did was we made a collaboration. I made a collaboration with the community learning centers to where my UNL students, upper-level undergraduates and graduate students, actually developed on their own science programs, and they went out to local middle schools and implemented an 8-week-long science course at different middle schools throughout Nebraska, or throughout Lincoln. So just to kind of walk you through how I structured this course, this evolved over the course of times that I taught it, but I think I finally have a great way of approaching this course now. So for the first few weeks, we do kind of orienting the students. They get background. I actually walk them through sample activities, so I bring some of my own activities and pretend like I'm the instructor and they're middle school students, and we actually kind of walk through some things. We read literature about how students learn, so we get a little bit of information on how learning takes place. We review the next generation science standards, focusing specifically on middle school because this is the group that we're targeting. And then we move into learning about local resources and developing skills and tools. So many of these people may look familiar to you. Sandra came and talked about Click to Science. We would go and visit Morrill Hall, and Kathy would tell us about the resources that Morrill Hall had to offer. Krista Adams would come and talk about best practices for engaging in science education. Mindy Anderson-Knott from Bozer came and talked about evaluation. And as part of the course, the students actually had to come up with their own evaluation for the program that they're implementing. And then Doug would come and talk about entomology resources. So the first couple weeks, they're kind of getting a feel for what they're going to be doing, learning about local resources that are available, developing a skill set, developing tools, and then the entire rest of the semester is spent with them splitting up into teams, coming up with a research theme or a STEM theme. So each group would split up into 2 to 3 people, and they would come up with a topic that they were going to focus on for their outreach course, for their after-school science program. And then they would keep that theme throughout those 8 weeks, but every week they'd have to come up with their own program. And then they would actually bring these programs to the class before they went to the middle school and practice with the rest of the class. And then the rest of the class would give them feedback like, there's no way this is gonna work, or that was really lame. Like, can we, I mean, they always did it in a very helpful way, but the feedback was great. So they got a practice run through with the rest of the class, and then they actually went after school to these local middle schools for 8 weeks, and they would go into the same school with the same group of kids, so they actually developed a rapport with them. So the big thing is that my UNL students could choose their own topics. So I wanted them to be passionate about what they're teaching. I wasn't going to say, you guys have to do climate change, you guys have to do evolution. And the range of topics that students came up with are incredible. So at the end, they actually had to do some formal write-ups for 3 of the presentations that they gave, and these are just a few examples. So one group worked on body system interactions and came up with this really fun game where they looked at how different systems of the human body interacted. There was a lot of microbes, a lot of people from research groups on campus who work on microbes, so there were a lot of different microbe activities. An activity about fruits and flowers, synaptic tag. There was one student who was a psychology major who was really interested in the brain, and she took the lead one day, and they came up with this neurobiology-focused program on synaptic tag. There was one group that focused a lot on space explorers. They had the kids actually building lunar landers and talked about different problems in designing space exploration things. And then, as you might expect, there were a lot of organismally based programs. So there were some groups that kind of walked through different animal groups. The big thing was that throughout all of this, all of these programs were engaging. They would get the kids outside, they would get them active, they would get them having fun, and it has been a tremendously successful program. I'll also say that this was done through the CLCs, through the community learning centers, which are the most need-based schools in Lincoln, and many of these kids were there because they had to be, not because they wanted to be. And so it's an additionally challenging group to work with, but yet my UNL students did an amazing job, and again, many of them are in here, in actually engaging with these kids and getting them excited about science. So we have produced after-school science clubs that ran for 8 weeks. The UNL students learned how to do evaluations. They would do weekly write-ups, a formal presentation at the end of the course, and then formal write-ups of 3 of these activities, with the idea being that if I ever find the time, I'm going to upload them to a website and make them available to other educators. So 31 students have gone through this course at this point. We've run 11 different after-school clubs, targeting 5 different CLC middle schools. And I just want to share 2 quick quotes. One is, "I can't express enough how my life is so much better since you showed me this thing called informal science education. I think I've finally found my own little niche, which is something I wasn't completely sure would ever actually happen." This was a master's student at UNL, many of you can probably guess who it is, who defended her master's thesis, moved out to San Diego, has a job in San Diego doing informal science, and is so incredibly happy and absolutely loving life. Another quote, so during the formal presentations, at the end of the semester, we would actually invite the CLC site leaders as well as the CLC coordinators so they could see what went on during their after-school clubs for these 8 weeks. And so this is an email quote that one of the CLC leaders sent. "I want to thank you very much for inviting us to hear the presentation by your students about their experiences at Mickle this semester. Your students showed such insight about their experiences, and clearly the experience changed their lives in some way. The work you did with this group up front was obviously the key to the success of your project. I think the highest goal an educator can have is to impact, inspire, and change their students in some way, and I believe you have met that goal." So this program has been incredibly successful, and I'm actually looking to institutionalize it. I'm hoping that someone else can step up and teach it. Again, any of you in the audience, postdocs, graduate students, please talk to me. I want to run it in the spring, and I would love to see it continue. Okay, so the second part was developing an interactive informal science education program. This is what we called 8-legged encounters. As Kathy alluded to, it was first done as a Sunday with a Scientist at Morrill Hall. We, at the time, broke the records for Sunday with a Scientist. We had over 850 people through in 3 hours. Titanoboa beat us a few weeks later, but I feel like that's not fair because that was a Smithsonian traveling exhibit. So this 8-legged encounters We have a series of standalone modules that work together, several of them focused on classification and taxonomy, several on silk and camouflage, and several research-related stations. And I just want to point out that one of our research-related stations that, working with Kathy, she helps us make this possible, is we actually had a community experiment where participants could walk in, they would get a headlamp, go into a darkened room, and we had buckets full of spiders set up throughout this room, and they could learn first and foremost how to eye shine for a spider, so they could learn how to find spiders at night, and then they would go collect their own spider and bring it out, and then that was their research subject. They would be guided to a table, and they actually walked through an experiment where they used the spider that they collected to collect a data point, and then when they were done collecting their research on their little data sheets, they came and we plugged them in to a computer where we had a separate monitor that as soon as their data got plugged in, the graph changed real time. So they could actually see how their data point was contributing to a bigger project. So in total, for this part, we have more than 13 modular stations. And for this community experiment, we actually analyzed the results and wrote up a little, one of my graduate students did this, Malcolm Rosenthal, wrote up a scientific paper discussing, like, what did we intend to do? How did we do it? What are the results? And we emailed it out to all the participants, everybody who left their email address, so they could actually see the end result of this. So another major component of Eight-Legged Encounters is its own standalone Path of Predators, which is a accordion-style fold-out activity booklet with original artwork by Paul Tisdale. The very first page says, grab a pencil, go journey through the exhibits, and discover the wonderful world of arachnids. And on this, we have a phylogenetic tree representing the most recent hypotheses of all living arachnid orders. Associated with each of these orders, we have a station. There's a 3x5 foam original artwork backdrop. We have original trading cards with facts on the back, a stamp that kids could get as they completed the station, often live animals, and an activity associated with each of these stations. And the artwork alone is absolutely worth going to this exhibit for. It's phenomenal. So these are another 11 additional stations, again, representing each of the living arachnid orders. So we've hosted Eight-Legged Encounters at Morrill Hall twice now, once in 2013, once in 2014, each time bringing in over 800 people. We've taken it to the Butterfly Pavilion outside of Denver, where about 500 people came through. And about a year ago, we took it to the Denver Museum of Nature and Science on their free and open day, and over 3,000 people came through. It was absolutely incredible. But not only have we hosted the full event, each of these components is modular, and we have used modules for a wide series of things, including summer camps at Color Middle School, the LPS Science Fair, Colorful Creatures Day at Morrill Hall, UNL Entomology's Bug Fest, and then I've actually taught a summer camp, a week-long summer camp for 2 summers now out at Prairie Hill Learning Center, where I use a lot of the material developed for this. So looking at the impact of Eight-Legged Encounters, more than 75% of adults reported becoming either much more interested or a little more interested in learning about scientific discoveries. Almost all, 94% of the adults reported learning something new. For the kids, 93% wanted to learn more about science, 84% wanted to learn more about spiders, which is great, 73% wanted to do their own research at home, and 60% said that when they grow up, they want a job in science. So to summarize, we've reached over 6,000 people with this event. I have worked with more than 200 volunteers. We now have more than 24 modular stations. The artwork alone is captivating and engaging. We've actually done some impact work with that, and most adults say that they were more engaged and drawn in because of the artwork. And a lot of these modules were actually developed by UNL students. So I also teach an arachnology course, and as part of the course, students are required to come up with a hands-on activity associated with one of the arachnid orders. And some of the things that they come up with is incredible. So I now have a backlog of activities for each of the orders, and I can add to it every year and every time I teach. So what I've learned through this is that to do effective informal science education, one thing is that you need to know your audience. And I think one of the reasons why Eight-Legged Encounters has been so successful is because we have activities that toddlers can do and that adults can do, and everything in between. So entire families can come, and that's my time, and wind up having something where everybody can learn something. I think the personnel is key. Having really good volunteers is incredibly important. They need to be engaging and knowledgeable. And doing something where you can enable continued learning. So our Path of Predators booklet, on each page, there's a little at home. There's a little thing where it provides a suggestion of what you can do at home for each of these orders. So I just want to end very quickly. I know I'm going into the panel discussion time, but my next step is I'm actually currently writing an iTest proposal that's due this November. My goal is to test a model of informal STEM education targeting, again, middle school youth who are at risk for low levels of STEM engagement because of limited access or social anxiety. Specifically, we're focusing on rural groups, on girls, and on shy youth. And I'm looking for both rural and urban sites to run a week-long summer camp. I'm looking ideally for 2 to 4 locations, so if anybody is interested in partnering up, I would love to talk with you. And there are so many people to thank, but I will stop there. Thank you.